Hello YouTube, this is Goddard Radio Mosca here again with another beer review. Now for this one, as you can probably tell if you've been watching my last videos, I'm filming in my dad's study again. Ideal for keeping beer. I've got a lot of it sitting around, it's brilliant. But being at home in Clackmannanshire, I thought it was time to do another one of the local Scottish beers from Clackmannanshire. So today I have for you the Harviestoun Schiehallion. Now it's a bit of a sin, this brewery is literally only about 4 or 5 miles away from where I actually live, but I've never tried anything from them, I've never tried any of the stuff, but I've heard great things about this particular beer and indeed the brewery itself. Now for this video I want to give a bit of a shout out to Paul at PABrewNews, again all one word. I'll put his channel in the channel link in the description so you can check that out. Big mad American metalhead, loves his Scottish craft beer, and I think he has a review of a couple of these Harviestoun ones as well, so check those out. It's very interesting to hear the Americans' perspective of craft beer. They're the godfathers really of the craft beer movement, so check out their stuff, but they seem to really enjoy it over there, which is always good. But as is usual with my videos, I'll just take you through a bit of a history of the Harviestoun Brewery, but if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free just to fast forward towards the last few minutes of the video and you will catch that. Now the history of this brewery goes back to 1983, so it's considerably older than the other Clackmannanshire brewery, the Williams brothers, and they started off in Glasgow. This one is a completely Clackmannanshire brewery. But at this particular point, the founder Ken Brooker was brewing beers in his shed to share with his friends, and apparently they had a traditional Tuesday tasting night at Ken's, and this grew to attracting around 40 people, just with friends bringing their friends and so on and so forth. But at these nights, Ken would insist that the guests filled out tasting notes so he could realise how he was getting on with these different beers that he was producing. But in 1986, Ken received planning permission to convert a 200-year-old steading. This is just a Scottish way of referring to the like a collective farmyard, basically, all the buildings in this. So that's just a little Scottish word for you there. But he converted this steading in Dollar, which is in the Ochil foothills in Scotland on the north side of Clackmannanshire, a very beautiful part of the country incidentally. But he converted this into a fully functioning brewery. They gradually built up the steading with very, very little money, and they built a lot of their equipment actually from salvage. Now the mash tun apparently was used for jam, and the boiler was used as a dye tun for dyeing wool. So it's quite cool actually that they built all these things themselves. But at this point the brewery only produced one beer, the Harviestoun Real Ale. It'd be quite cool to see them reintroduce that actually. I'm pretty sure they don't do that particular one anymore unless they're doing it under another name. But in 1988, due to the ever increasing demand for their beers, they added another 2 new ales to their repertoire. Before I tell you what these are, in Scotland they used to refer to beers with shillings, so you would see a number and then a shilling on it, just a forward slash and then a hyphen behind it. My dad tells me that this was used to refer to the beer's density. It's just an old way of notating beers, basically, for those of you watching outside of Scotland who might not be familiar with that. But they introduced the 80 Waverley and the 70 shilling Old Manor Strong Ale. Now in 1989, Ken took the decision to invest in the brewery and installed it with all professional kit. So 6 years after he started his hobby, it was really starting to get serious for him. But they introduced a few new beers over the next few years. The Montrose Ale in 1990, the Ptarmigan 85 shilling in 1991. The name of this one was originally used to confuse the English. It's spelt Ptarmigan, so it's a bit of a weird one. And this one, the Schiehallion Lager, was introduced in 1994, and this won awards in 1996, 97 and 99. No one apparently at the brewery really predicted the future success that this beer would have, but they were also experimenting with various other different recipes over this period of time. But in 1995, Stuart Cale joined the brewery as head brewer from the Vaux Brewery in England. I'm not sure if it's Vaux or Vaux, it's spelled V-A-U-X, I'm not sure. But in 1996, their Liberation beer won the first Tesco Beer Challenge. Tesco are a supermarket chain in the UK, for those of you watching outside of the UK, but this resulted in their first bulk order to the brewery. But they say the day the tanker arrived to take away their beer for sale, it really strengthened their belief that their beers were of the highest quality. And the following year, the Bitter and Twisted was introduced, and I'll try and get a bottle of that to review for you at a later date. But this is the beer that the brewery consider as their flagship beer. But they started their first exports to the US in partnership with Matthias Neidhart from B United International, who was very keen to import quality beers from the British Isles over to the USA. But for the turn of the new century, or the new millennia, the brewery introduced the beer Old Engine Oil, and they used this to enter the Tesco Beer Challenge once again, and of course they won once again. And this apparently is one of the head brewer Stuart's favourite beers, and this allowed them to create the Engineer's Reserve and Ola Duv beers. Now in 2002, they also aged this beer in whisky casks from the Dalmore distillery to produce Old Engine Oil Special Reserve, which was an exclusive for the US market. Now the following year in 2003, the Bitter and Twisted won Supreme Champion at the Great British Beer Festival, and this is an achievement that the brewery are particularly proud of. But that same year the brewery decided that the steading they were in dollar was no longer big enough to produce the beers to meet demand, so they moved a few miles down the road to the Alva industrial estate and then won the Best Bottled Beer Award at the International Beer Awards. Just so you know exactly where we're talking about geographically in Scotland, the Ochil Hills, where this brewery brews, is on the north side of Clackmannanshire. It's right in the middle of Edinburgh and Glasgow in the central belt. On the southern side of these Ochil Mountains you have Stirling, which is obviously very, very famous for William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, the Battle of Bannockburn, where the English tried to invade Scotland in 1314, the early 1300s. And then when you go over to the north side, these hills stretch out over towards Fife, and to the north of that you have Perth, the gateway to the Highlands. So you're talking right bang in the middle of Scotland. That's where these beers are. Or the brewery is, sorry. But in 2006 the brewery was sold to the Caledonia Brewery from Edinburgh, but this only lasted until 2008, and this was when Heineken from the Netherlands bought over the Caledonian Brewery, but they didn't want Harviestoun. A bit stupid of them, because it's a very good brewery, so I hear. But during this partnership though, they struck a deal to age a special version of their Old Engine Oil in Highland Park casks, and they called this the Ola Dove series. Now in 2009 they began kegging their beers, and they're now starting to outgrow their purpose-built brewing facility in Alva that I mentioned a minute ago, and they're strapping new fermentation vessels to the outside of the building. But now the brewery have a total of 17 employees, and it really appears that they'll grow further. So in the space of 30 years, it's taken them a bit longer to get as big as the likes of Brewdog and Williams Brothers have, but it's a 30-year brewery. It's a mark of their achievement that they keep going and they keep expanding like this. I'm really interested to try this beer now, I have to say. But just so you have a list of the different beers that they do, obviously there's the Schiehallion here, there's the Bitter and Twisted, which I'll review for you at a later date, Old Engineer Oil, Engineer's Reserve, Wild Hop IPA, Wild Hop Gold, a golden ale, and the Ola Dove, which you can get in 12, 16 and 18 varieties. And the brewery website actually has a very interesting blog as well, where you can keep an eye on the latest happenings at the brewery, and I'll put the link to the brewery in the description so you can have a little look at that and keep up to date with it if you are interested. But as is usual, let's just have a little look at the bottle art on this one. I'll just bring the camera up again so you'll see that. As you can see, the Schiehallion Hill in here. When I was at school, incidentally, one of our houses there was 4 different houses depending on your surname, and a lot of the houses were named after the hills, and one of the houses was Schiehallion, incidentally. On the back it has a little bit of a blurb. It says Schiehallion is a famous Scottish mountain, often shrouded in cool, refreshing, misty swirls of early morning air. It's the inspiration for this artisan craft brewed lager. It's delicately crafted using Hersbrucker lager hops. Schiehallion is crisp, refreshing, with a beautifully fresh grapefruity taste. The hops used in this one are Challenger, Styrian Goldings and Hallertau Hersbrucker. Now the Schiehallion apparently is perfect, served straight from the fridge. So yeah, that's the little blog on this one. For those of you interested in the bottle cap of this one, it has the little mouse on it. I need to find out why the symbol is that mouse. I've heard that they used to have a little mouse run around the brewery there, and this was why they used the little mouse on the bottle cap, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll phone them up and ask them, because they're only a couple of miles away. They should be willing to tell me that. But let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting of this one. This is a 4.8% crafted lager. Let's get this guy open. There we are, sorted. So let's get this guy poured out. I've heard very, very good things about this beer, as I mentioned earlier, so I'm really looking forward to trying this one. Let's just swirl this about, get a bit more head on it, give it a bit more of an aggressive pour here. The tanker, just make sure the tanker doesn't overflow. I'm stealing my dad's old Royal Air Force tanker. So as you can see, it's a really beautiful kind of clear. It's actually a bit more amberish than I've seen a lager for a little bit. It's just a little bit richer in colour, I have to say. So you can see there's a sort of nice finger head there, maybe a finger and a half if I'm being generous. It's got a nice frothy head on it. There's some bigger bubbles in here. A sort of chunky head is a way to describe that, actually. In terms of the aroma, it's got quite a craft brewed smell, I have to say, for a lager. You don't normally expect a big aroma from a lager, but I'm getting sort of the bready aroma from this. There's a bit of tropical fruit and citrus in there, but there's grassy notes as well. You can smell the German hops off this one, really, the Hallertau hops, famous region down in sort of Bavaria, if I remember rightly. brewing hops. This has got a really nice smell to it. You don't really... It's very rare to find a lager that has such a smell on it. But yeah, it's quite bready, tropical fruits, a bit of citrus, grassy notes in there, and you can smell the German hops. This looks really good, but let's give it a taste. It's nice. It's quite hoppy actually. It's a lot hoppier than a lager I've had in a long time. It's more... This is more like an ale in my opinion, but yeah. Yeah, it's very sweet and fruity to start, and the hops are in there as well. Very hoppy for the style. I mean, the grassy notes are quite present in there as well, but it's mainly the fruits and the hops that are coming in at the start. I'd say there's a bit of there is some floral and herbal notes to this as well. This is really good. I can see why people are so taken aback by this brewery. Excellent stuff. But yeah, the sweet kind of grapefruity, tropical fruits are there. I'm getting just a little hint of citrus, but mainly the grapefruit flavours, I would say. As I say, it's quite hoppy, and there's actually there is the element of grassiness and herbal notes to the hops, and maybe a little bit of floral elements to it as well, but the malt flavours come in a bit later on, and they stay with it into the kind of aftertaste. There's maybe a bit of sort of graininess to it as well. This is a really good lager. I'd love to try this on draft and see what the difference is between the bottle conditions and the draft, because usually bottled beers are usually not as good as the draft, and if this is as good, you know, if you can produce it with this quality in the bottle, you know, the draft will be even better. But yeah, this is a really beautiful lager. Very unusual for the style to find such a good lager, in fact. As you can see, the head's actually dissipated on this quite a bit. It's just got a thin kind of layer that you would get as you usually do when you're drinking away through a beer. It's just got a nice little thin layer over it just now. In terms of the mouthfeel, mid-bodied, it's very smooth. Not so much creamy, I would say, more of a smooth beer, and the carbonation of it's just right. It makes it quite crisp and quite refreshing. Overall, I would say this is an absolutely beautiful lager. I'm highly impressed with this one. I'll definitely be coming back, and I would definitely drink this as a draft beer in the pub. I'll need to see if the local pubs actually stock this one, which hopefully they do. But I would highly recommend that you take a look at the Harviestoun Brewery. Really worth having a look at, in my opinion, just based on this beer though. I'll get the other beers and review those, but I've heard very good things about this brewery, and I have to say that it's justified. Really good work from the local guys over in Alva there. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Hopefully this has been informative for you, and I've not just been rambling away. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please consider subscribing to the channel. There will be more reviews, both of the Williams Brothers Brewery, basically all Scottish craft brews. I really love Scottish craft beer, but I'll be doing more from the Harviestoun Brewery. Definitely, they've convinced me with the Schiehallion that they're worth revisiting, and they're definitely, you know, I'd be quite happy to drink this beer all day, you know. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. But you've been watching Goddard Radio Moscow. Thanks again, and I shall catch you soon. Cheers.